Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Heaping Spoonful. This is the Mid-South podcast where we talk about the Mid-South food scene. So I gotta say, so I'm Brian McFadden, currently own Brewed and Barley down there in Dogtown in Argenta, North Little Rock, Arkansas. For those of you who don't know, I moved down here about 5 years. January will be 5 years. Down here from Philadelphia. And I remember when I came to visit, there was like a few names that everybody was like these are the people that you want to surround yourself by, okay? And my cousin, Jess, was like number one on his list was Dave Burnett. Dave Burnett, a lot of people out there listening to this podcast know who Dave is. We talk about people like servers and stuff like that. We talk about JoJo Sims, who I had, the pleasure to interview a few weeks ago. I love that woman. That woman makes me feel alive.
Likewise.
You know? But this person sitting across the table from me was another name that popped up. And actually, your name came up from Dave Burnett. Dave Burnett was like, yeah, man, he's a guy. He's a guy. And I immediately was like, okay, I know the name. And we had just said, just talking before we got on here, that I feel embarrassed because we haven't hung out.
It's mutual, chef.
So we have with us today, we have Brett Basset, currently of Origami Sake. But I know you've done so many other things than that.
We like to call it a professional alcoholic, without question. Yes.
Functioning too.
Without question, yes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, welcome, man. Welcome.
Thank you. It's absolute pleasure, truly.
Yeah. I'm sorry it took you so long to get here, but I do know you were feeling like walking up the stairs today, and you were like, well, we had a sales meeting this morning, and then 2 hours, and you're looking at the clock, and you're like, man, I gotta go.
Yeah, we're in 10 states now, so it's a lot to take on at this point.
It's crazy.
In the best of ways.
Man, I feel like where's your meeting at? Is it in a boardroom, or is it just an office?
Zoom, because we came from 4 different states today for about 10 of us. So we're all over the place all the time.
I've sat in plenty of those meetings. Our meetings right now at Brewed and Barley are a little smaller. It's like me and my cousin, our front of the house manager, Slade, But I've sat in those big sales meetings before, and I always thought that those sales meetings, just like a bar, you never have a clock on the wall. I feel like those sales meetings are the same thing. You don't put a clock on the wall because everybody's like, man, I understand this is a sales meeting, but bro, I got to go so I can sell.
Yes, exactly.
I got to go. I got to do this.
We haven't been able to do one for the last month. So this one was kind of a recollection of trade shows and everything else from 5, 6, 7 different states. So yeah, it was a big meeting today.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to get into some sake in a little bit, okay? And as a matter of fact, you were actually the first person on the podcast that brought gifts. You brought gifts today. And it got some hats. I got some pins. Are they magnets or are they
they're like lapel pins.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep.
Hell yeah. But you also brought sake. So we're
of course
sipping on a little sake here, which is delightful.
Yeah. The sales bag lives on my shoulder, and there are always bottles of sake in or around somewhere. Yeah, they're always close.
Nice. So we're going to get into some sake, but I want to talk about your history. And, I started the last podcast like this because, listen, I love doing this. I'm a chef, a restaurant owner. I've done everything in the restaurant business, but this isn't about me. Benny Keith, Rusty Mathis, GM over here. Benny Keith sponsors this podcast, but it's not about me. It's not about Benny Keith. We want to tell your story.
Absolutely.
And man, I want to hear, I want to talk about first restaurant job. How'd you get into it?
Let's do it.
That's what I want to hear.
I'm excited.
So first restaurant job, first position, boom.
So, the history goes back to my stepdad. So my stepdad's Mark Abernathy that owns Local Luna and Red Door, who just sold just within the last month after being in the industry for 40 plus years. I think Local Luna almost hit 30 years in existence, which is insane in the restaurant business.
It's just crazy.
So my mom and him met when I was right around 10, and it's right when he was opening up Local Luna. So my stepbrother and I at the time, he was about a year and a half younger than I am, we literally camped out at Local Luna when there were no locks on the doors in tents because he had all the kitchen equipment delivered, and there was just a shotgun on the floor because at the time Riverdale was a little seedy. Like it was kind of iffy there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, like we got to see Local Luna before it was just a shell. So that's where my experience started, was literally being born and raised, and not born, but raised from I was 10 or 11 in the hospitality industry. So, of course, my first job was on a Sunday, washing dishes at brunch when I was either 14 or 15 years old in the kitchen at Local Luna. So, you see things in that dish pit, and you're like, man, I don't know if I want to ever eat hollandaise sauce for the rest of my life because those plates have to soak for a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where it started. So everything from back of house, I bussed, I expoed, I prepped, washed dishes, I've hosted, I've waited tables, I've GM'd, I've bartended, I've beverage directed,
Done it all.
everything but own one so far. Yes.
It's never too late, by the way.
It's always in my head. I'm like, do I want to be that masochistic or not? Like, I'm not quite sure yet.
Well, I can say if I can give you any advice at all, if you ever do that, just make sure that you have a day off.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is when the restaurant is open, you're not closed. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
You're not off.
Yes.
That's I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
It's like one of the best things that my cousin and I ever did was just pick a day to be closed.
Yep.
So it's like no phone calls. No,
Yeah, I learned that through my stepdad, which he never got burnt out, which is insane. But yeah, I mean, having those, hey, the air conditioner's not working, and you're trying to be on vacation or something else, and you're working 24/7. It doesn't
We had
end.
one of those a couple weeks ago where the air conditioner wasn't working.
Welcome to the restaurant business.
Yeah. And the reach-in freezer. Hey, is this reach-in freezer supposed to be at 40 degrees? No.
Right.
The answer to that is no.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's not how food's supposed to be stored.
Yeah. No. That's
So yeah, from there it went to being in college and needing money, just spending money, whatever else. And so I was at the University of Arkansas, and it got reinvigorated. So I was living in a fraternity house at the time, and catty corner it was Cardinal Hall.
okay.
So I had a job at Ella's for a couple of years there, and that kind of reinvigorated that. I went back, did some graphic design stuff in college, whatever else, and then that's when the bartending started. That would have been like 2009, 2010, and it's when my stepdad reinvigorated what used to be Benevita, and that's what came Red Door. So Benevita was an Italian concept. He closed it, reopened Red Door, which was like an American bistro breakfast spot, what it is today.
Nice.
So that's where I started bartending. So there's a guy named David Shropshire. If you're in the workout community or physical training community, whatever else, that's where he is now. But he's the one that trained me to bartend.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he's always been the sensei. But the craft side came from Lee Edwards, who was actually myself and David Burnett's kind of mentor and sensei. Lee's like grandfather cocktail of Little Rock. So he's the dude.
I have actually never had the pleasure to meet him. But
We'll change that. I'll get that fixed.
His name. And whenever I talk to Dave Burnett, which I just talked to Dave like 2 weeks ago or something, he's coming in town in December. By the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You probably know me.
Yeah. Very, yeah. I communicate with David pretty often.
Yeah. But Lee comes up all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've never met the guy. Again, I've been here 5 years, but a lot of that was COVID and,
Of course.
Well, at least almost half of that.
Yeah. Lee was in the Hillcrest scene for a long time and was at the Capitol Hotel for a long time. That's how David knows him. And that's how he knows like Chef Matt Bell. Mm-hmm. That whole squad originated at the Capitol Hotel, and then Lee was in Hillcrest. But then he opened a 5 a.m. bar that was called Salute, and it was on North University in the Prospect Terrace, it was called the Prospect Building.
Oh, okay.
So right before you get to Cantrell, headed north on University, is that tall, like 10, 12-story building on the right.
Yes.
There was a bar in the bottom of that was open until 5 in the morning.
Oh, geez.
And so it was the service industry spot, and everybody that got kicked out of any bar they were at in Hillcrest at the time could carry up the street, and party for another 3 hours. So that's where I met Lee, was after bartending downtown at a little club called Ernie Biggs. He would go there post-work, have a burger, and kind of unwind from the night, or just keep it going until the sun comes up.
Now, of course, I know where I wouldn't say style. I don't know the best way to put it. But I know, the history of Lee Edwards and what he brings to the table.
Right.
And when you talk about like your first bartending gig to say, working with Lee, what, like, we talking beer, wine? Are we talking like, I can tell you like my bartending experience like started like beer and like making Captain and Cokes and like
Absolutely.
Jack and Gingers and that kind of stuff. And then when did it start evolving to the point where you're like, okay.
Gotcha. So yeah, Lee was definitely the introduction to the craft side of things for sure. Like my started with Local and Red Door where, it was very much margaritas, cosmopolitans, your standard issue by the glass wines and beers, some local draft stuff at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that evolved into me getting hired at the busiest club that was downtown. So I bartended at the busiest club called Ernie Biggs. It's a 2-story piano bar / DJ dance club until 2 a.m, 3 nights a week, and that's where I learned speed.
Oh yeah.
So that category of it is huge when you get into a high volume craft cocktail bar.
Oh yeah.
And so Lee, knowing that, kind of ushered me into his wing, under his wing, and then when we opened Big Orange Midtown in 2013, that's when he hired me on and the bar staff to open that bar. And we became like South on Main, where David was at the time,
Right.
the 2 busiest craft cocktail bars that existed in Little Rock.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it slowly evolved from there. I mean, we had everything under the sun at that bar. There was 200 plus craft beers, 5 or 6, BTG wines that were kind of inaccessible to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
There was sake because Ben Bell was there when we first opened.
Okay. Yeah.
That's where I met Ben Bell. So that's how the whole Origami connection happened. At the time, Ben Bell was one of the bar managers of that opening, and he was teaching himself Japanese and applying for internships on his days off while sitting at the bar, just shooting emails in every direction that he could.
Talk about putting work in.
It's wild.
I mean, it's crazy.
Wild.
It's like so many people like that I came up with, they become somms.
Yep.
They get, their, culinary degree or this and that. But when you're talking about like, you have to learn another language.
Yes.
And not an easy one.
Absolutely not.
Like you have to learn another language to follow your passion. I mean, that is badass.
Yes. I mean, he got a yes and went over to Japan for about 48 hours. And they were like, your Japanese isn't good enough. This isn't going to work. So then he had to come back to the States, learn some more. And then he utilized the sister city program with Hot Springs, which is Hanamaki, Japan, where the International Sake Brewers Guild is located. And that's how he got hooked up to Nambu Bijin, where he interned for 2 years, which in my opinion is possibly the best sake brewery in existence.
That is just unreal, man.
It's nuts.
I mean, you talk about putting work in. Like, I have a lot of friends that really put some work in. But, I mean, talk about putting work in.
Yeah, I mean, this is an idea of Ben's that's at least 15 years old.
Man.
That came to fruition of what it is. And now we're the largest domestically owned sake brewery in the country.
That is just crazy.
Wild.
And there's a reason for it, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a reason for it. And not just, yes, obviously him, of course, being at the top. But, I mean, it's a good product, man.
I'm very happy to sell this on a daily basis. And it makes my job much easier that it happens to be delicious.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely makes things easier. But, I mean, being proud to sell something. I mean, we talk about that stuff at the restaurant all the time. Like, I can sit with any food preparer. I can sit and taste beers all day, but... do I want to sell it? Like, do I want to sell this? Am I proud to sell it at my place? And of course, this product we are. It's
same. Yeah. And that's where I came from with the previous job at the Nux Distributors. Was very used to selling small production, boutique type stuff, passion project type stuff. So my background in the sales side of things was very much on par to what this is and what I get to preach on a daily basis.
Very cool. Very cool. So you go from bartending to then managing at Yellow Rocket, right?
It was even a bigger jump. So Lee got a job as a national rep for a company called Household Pins, and they didn't have anybody to lay into the beverage director role that he had. And I hadn't even managed any of those bars. I was just bartending and still finishing up college. And so I threw my name in the hat. And Lee was like, I'm not going to tell anybody this, but you might have been the only person that I recommended that was in-house. And they were like, all right, let's take a shot. And they said yes. And all of a sudden I was the beverage director of 7 restaurants, the largest privately owned restaurant group in Arkansas. And they were like, all right, have fun. And I was like, this
okay.
Did I make a mistake? This is a lot of stuff. So yeah, it was, luckily they were all set up in the same way. Even though the concepts were so different, they were all structured under Lee's tutelage of craft, heavy influence of, you know, what are the little guys doing? What's the cool stuff? And so, yeah, I was able to dive in head first and really get into what all those were for the different concepts.
That's awesome. I mean, I know that, first of all, I mean, beverage director of 7, you know, restaurants.
Including Lost 40, so it was the largest brewery in the state as well.
Oh, geez.
It was a lot.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Wow. That's just crazy.
Yes.
But, you know, you obviously have a passion for it, which makes it, I hate the word, it doesn't make it easy. It makes it easier, you know, when you have a passion for it and you get up every morning. I always say, like, and my wife hates when I say this, but it's like, I mean, I get to make money doing what I love to do, you know. Not many people can say that.
No, to be able to translate passion in your own brain to a job perspective is, I mean, it's a gift.
Yeah. Like
now being on this side of things for so long, like I could never work for a big corporation, something corporate, sell. Yeah. I mean, it would feel like selling my soul for a paycheck, and I absolutely not. I can't do that. I
definitely understand where you're coming from. And then, you know, I mean, right now I don't think I could work for anybody. I don't know if I could do that.
Couldn't go back? Like,
yeah, I don't think so. I don't know. But I mean, so now you're you're beverage directing all 7 restaurants, all different. You said like, yeah, obviously all different, you know, tutelage, all that stuff.
Yes.
But you have Lee, you know, you could talk to, you know, if you needed to.
And we still talk on a daily basis. So that's never stopped for the last 11 years at this point.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I have a couple of those folks back home, and sometimes I don't think they realize how much that means to me that I have somebody that I can talk to.
Huge.
Somebody that's been through it, you know, and I'm like, hey, what about this? What about that? And it's like, man, just stop. You're doing fine. Just keep doing you, you know, because you take it and you make it your own too.
Yes.
You know. So then where do you go after that?
So did that for almost 2 years, and we sold a lot of products from a distributor that was called Denux. And Alexia Lishri is one of the owner-operators of that. It was an entire craft wine and spirits portfolio. And so I left that job, and she was like, hey, we're going to need a sales rep in Central Arkansas. I'm kind of stepping down to go into just an ownership role and not be boots on the ground. So I'll need you in a handful of months. So I kind of floated around, did some, you know, pop-up bartending events until it happened, and then she hired me, and I was there for 7 years almost.
I was going to say, I know you were there for a while.
So there's a lot of wineries and things that I fell in love with. When I was beverage director, I got to go to like Portland Cocktail Week. I got to go to Camp Runamuck, which is a whiskey camp, invite-only kind of thing, Oregon Pinot Camp, like all these really cool things, and it really reinvigorated my love for small production stuff. And so getting to join Denux was that, you know, all coming together. And I get to be with all the cool kids. Like I got to sell stuff to you guys as soon as you open.
Yeah.
You know, have a big footprint on what Arkansas does, and you know, products that are respected all over the world. And getting to have them on menus in Arkansas is a really cool thing. I mean, we had 2 wineries that we were their best market outside of their home state.
That's so cool.
It was so much fun to be able to sell stuff like that.
And, you know, to present that, and obviously you have a passion for it, but to be able to present that stuff, like me coming from Pennsylvania. There was such a, man, when I told everybody that I was moving to Arkansas, and me being like a big wine guy and a big beer guy and stuff like that, they're like, dude, I mean, it's Pennsylvania is already hard enough for wine. You know, what's Arkansas going to be, you know? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, you know? And then I get here, and then, you know, Denux is amazing. I mean, just phenomenal. And like you said, just bringing in great product, like you know, small batch stuff, just beautiful stuff and good people.
Yes.
You know? Which is, to me, that's really important too. Obviously, I know it's important to a lot of people, so I'm not saying it's not, but it's like being able to work at Denux, which is just packed with good people, family owned, you know,
exactly,
bringing in amazing product. You know, it certainly says something.
And the connection was even further. So Alexia, that owns and operates it, her stepfather is Gary Green, the attorney. So he's kind of behind the scenes of that distributorship. And I got to be a consultant for the wine buyer group that he's a part of that goes out to Napa every February that's called the Cliffwood Wine Syndicate. So there's a wine auction that happens the third week of February. It's called Premier Napa Valley. Okay. And the biggest and baddest of all the winemakers in Napa participate because it's an only like 5-case lot. So it's like one barrel.
Yeah.
And it's the only place you can buy it. And I've seen barrels go for $220,000 for 60 bottles of wine. And so this group out of Arkansas has always been in the top 5 spenders of this auction for the last like 12 or 13 years. So I got to be a consultant for the last, I don't know, close to 6 or 7 years for multiple trips to go out there. So I connected with Gary on that front as well. Wow. And so we got to kind of grab some brands that didn't have representation in Arkansas already and introduce them to the market that we already had like personal connections with because of that trip. So there's all these really small folds to things, but it's a relationships business. Like that's what it's all about.
It's all about. Yeah, for sure. And that's, that's one of the reasons why, a lot of us get in the business, because of those relationships, You're talking about mentors, you're talking about people that you meet halfway across the country.
Exactly.
That's just awesome. I remember when I first moved here, I was, before I moved here, I was running a bar back home. And when I moved here, like Dave Burnett and I knew a lot of the same people because, these guys travel all over the country. We're like, yeah, I know that guy. Yep. Yeah.
And because of those things like Run Amok and Oregon Pinot Camp and whatever else, like the net gets so much smaller because you're meeting people from all over the world at these things. And you're immersed with them, or you're on a school bus with them for 5 days, like kind of stuff. And you're like, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Where are you from? And so, and those relationships, what I've learned so far, they last. They don't go away.
Yeah.
They're there.
That's so cool. Oh. And, to be able to do that, man, I have stories like that. Most of them I can't talk about right now. But I certainly have some of those stories. But, that brings into like educating people too on what goes into all this. You obviously have a passion for it, but I think a lot of people out there could be a lot of people. Some people might listen to Heaping Spoonful and like they just, maybe they work at a restaurant, they're a server and stuff like that. But like to go to Napa, for days, to meet people, bringing in new product, good product, I've on the culinary side of things, I've done a lot. I haven't done it with wine or anything. As much as I love it, I haven't done it. But there's a lot that goes into this whole thing.
Yes.
It's not just like we're not going to the corner store and just picking up a few bottles.
Correct.
You talk about traveling all over the country to find good product and educate yourself on good product too. Yep. Man.
It's not even that. That those producers, that's their passion project. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, am I going to trust this person all the way over in Arkansas from a Napa Valley or Sonoma perspective to properly sell my stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Because we're a different state. And then if you sign on with the distributor here, it's the distributor that has to let that product go. You can't change distributors unless the distributor says yes. So like you're locked in. And so it's a big trust, like, all right, here's the jump. Let's see if it works. We think we're confident in you guys and go sell some stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to put my name on this product, but am I going to put my name on you?
Exactly.
Put your name on my product also.
100%.
And it makes sense, us coming from a food side of things, we're in a landlocked state. Yep. So like I bring in seafood, and when I first moved here, I met some people that were bringing in fresh seafood and stuff like that. And, I didn't realize that at first. I kind of didn't put 2 and 2 together. Like, right. We're bringing in this beautiful product. What are you doing with it?
Exactly.
And it's the same thing. Yeah.
Because we only have so much of this. So we want somebody that's taking this product to do something that can show its potential.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Which I think you do a pretty good job of from what I've seen.
The effort is there. We certainly, we put strong, man, I'm going to push this out there right now. Like, I know you do too. I love pushing the envelope.
Absolutely.
I don't like people telling me, no, you can't do that. That's like the kid in me.
Yes.
I have 2 9-year-old boys, and like I see that in them. Like, what do you mean, no? Like, no. All right. Well, now I'm going to do it.
times 10.
And now I'm going to do it. But man, you surround yourself by good people, man. Surround yourself with good people. I have an amazing staff.
Yes, you do.
And I know what you're doing right now, and what you've done in the past. Obviously, you didn't do it on purpose, but we're talking about your history here. You got Lee Edwards, you got Dave Burnett, your stepfather,
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff. I mean, you are surrounded by amazing people.
Yes.
And that's just...
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in that aspect, truly. And yeah, I don't take that for granted at all. Those are people that I think or talk to every day, either think about or talk to them every day. So like, I absolutely understand the importance of those names and who they are and the influence that they have on me and the doors that they've opened in terms of, what I've been able to walk through and get into. So yeah, you're spot on that statement.
And if I know you, like, if you're anything like me, and this isn't, this is coming from I don't know, it might sound a little off, but, there's some people in my life, maybe, could be now working at Brood or could be in the past. I hope that I put them in the right direction. And, so they can call me and they can say like, hey man, I need your help with something. I just got, a promotion and now I'm in charge of 7 different restaurants and I kind of need your help. I just need a little bit of advice.
100%. Yes. I didn't get to do that as much as I wanted to at Yellow Rocket. It was just a little too rambunctious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for me, it's been on the education side of things, especially at Denucks and now with Origami, especially those two. All of these products, it's usually things that you have not experienced or seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And so the education aspect is so important. And getting to, preach like the super small production agave gospel with Denucks on the mezcal and Racia and Bacanora and Satol things. And, getting to do like Atlanta Food and Wine Festival classes because of that knowledge. Like Ben Bell and I hosted a mezcal and sake pairing class together with cheese. At the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival in 2019. So like that kind of stuff, like getting to connect on those things. And usually just about every time that I walk into a door with a bag on my shoulder, I can see that usually people are excited, which for me, that's the largest compliment that I can receive. And that, okay, Brett's here, he's got something weird in his bag and we're about to have some fun with it. And like, that's exactly what I want, especially as a sales rep. That's as best as you can ask for.
And on top of that too, is like, so I went downstairs and I was waiting for you, and I literally was down there for like 90 seconds before you walked up, but I saw you walk up with a bag and I immediately got excited.
Perfect.
And I was like, well, okay, one, he can't leave it in the car because we're in Arkansas and, okay, it's October, but it's still probably 93 degrees outside.
Correct.
So can't leave it in the car. So he's going to bring it in and then...
See, but I could because there's always an ice chest with ice in the car as well.
True.
Truly.
Yeah, always.
I'm serious, always.
Yeah, I have like 3 wine keys in my car and like...
Yes, always prepared, man.
Whenever I actually picked my car up from the mechanic this morning, and he's always like, I've been going to him for a while now, and he's always like, yeah, your car is very interesting. I was like, you don't have anybody else that works in the restaurant business? Right, and he's like, none that I know, but I can tell when I look in your car that you work in the restaurant.
Exactly.
There's a couple of chef coats hanging and wine keys and you name it. It's all
welcome to my life. Like
yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but I think even to key more on that is, the Central Arkansas market, especially competing with what Northwest Arkansas is doing. I love the state of Arkansas as a whole. But yeah, those two markets are entirely different. And I think with the combination of COVID, losing a lot of our industry employees to different markets nationally or moving up to Northwest, and you're seeing this influx of there aren't really any more late night spots in Little Rock because there's not really, that climate just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And for me, it's as much as I can to get people to educate and want to learn more about this small production stuff so we can reinvigorate whatever that is and how we can do it is so important. Usually when I hand my card to people, I literally tell them the verbiage of, please bug me. Send me text messages, email me, do whatever. If you have any questions, however I can help, yes. So I think right now it's always been helping people find new jobs.
Yeah.
It's always hey man, there's some openings over here. If you want to float over there and go say hi, put me down as a reference, that kind of stuff. Or even joining us. Now we've got, Ben Bell, of course, was the origination of the idea. Mm-hmm. Eric Michael Morris is our director of brewery operations. He worked at Lost 40 for 7 or 8 years as a brewer. Myself, and then Ben C. is on the brew team now, who is also beverage director at Yellow Rocket for a while.
I didn't know Ben C. was over there.
Who also was a sales rep at Denucks. So there's all these interesting overlaps of, again, it just goes back to how small that community is. So yeah, there's 4 of us now. all at Origami.
Talk about surrounding yourself by good people.
100%. Yes.
That's so awesome.
Yes.
That's so awesome. Man, all right. So I want to do what I call like eye-opener type stuff. And what I mean by that is I want to talk about product a little bit, but like personal stuff.
Yes.
We're not going to get too personal. But like I know, and this is something that I've asked everybody that has been on the podcast so far. Is there something, say, when you're out in Napa, or even like you're sitting down, you know, this could be a year ago, this could be 10 years ago or something, something that you cracked like a bottle of, or somebody was like, man, you got to taste this, that all of a sudden you're just like,
The aha moment.
what just happened?
Yes.
Like, so what was that for you?
Those answers are very easy for me. I love this question because I love these products, and I've gotten to spend a lot of time with these people because of how much I love these products. I got very lucky in doing so. But the first was when we first opened Big Orange Midtown, and I was just getting into the wine spectrum of things, and we did a Raptor Ridge wine dinner. And there was 3 different expressions of Raptor Ridge Pinot Noir in front of you. So I couldn't afford to have a ticket there, but the wines remained the next day. So I show up to work, Lee's on the other side of the bar, and he's like, all right, here's 3 wine glasses. These are all Pinot Noir, made from the same winemaker at the same winery, but they're all different expressions of terroir. And at the time, I was like, what the hell is terroir?
What the hell does that mean?
It's like, it's a sense of place. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, let's do this. And it blew my gourd. I was like, wait a minute. Like, what? And like just getting to try all 3 of those side by side by side. And it just introduced my brain. And we were just overwhelming ourselves with knowledge on like the craft cocktail spectrum and craft beer. And for this to be like, oh my God, wine does this too? Like, wait a minute, time out. And so like that was my introduction to wine. And so Raptor Ridge is always going to have a huge place in my heart. I'll be there in 10 days.
Oh man.
I'll literally be at Raptor Ridge in 10 days in Willamette Valley, Oregon. And Scott and Annie Schull have become amazing friends in the industry. I got to sell them for 7 years at Denucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm staying with them here in a little while. I've worked harvest with them twice now. Like it's
so cool.
Special stuff. The other side of the coin is David Suro. So David Suro is the owner of Suro Imports, and that's on the agave side. So he owns Sierra Valles, which is a tequila producer. They also do a mezcal in unison with Mezcal Don Mateo. But that whole group is Tequila Cascajuin, Don Mateo, Sierra Valles, Sierra Azul. And I got to travel to Mexico with them after we did a tequila dinner with David Suro. He invited me to be a brand ambassador for the official release of the Bat-Friendly Agave program, which was with Rodrigo Medellin, who now has a BBC National Geographic documentary. He's the Batman of Mexico. You just Google the Batman of Mexico, and there's Rodrigo Medellin. So there's this huge connection between a bat species and the natural reproductive cycle of agave, and how it was farmed and kind of ugly farmed, that this bat species became almost endangered. And usually if it's within a generation or two, they know that it's human influence. So they brought him on to figure it out.
Oh, wow.
And so they're sacrificing like 5% of agave from 4 different farmers or tequila owners to reproduce naturally, which creates this thing called a quiote. It's a large stalk, and it's got this flower plume. And these particular bats operate like hummingbirds. They feed on the nectar of these flowers.
Okay.
And then within 2 years of them implementing that program, the bats off the list. So there's like all these cool things and connections. But David Suro introduced me to that, took me on that trip. We were in the middle of like Michoacan, 6,000 feet elevation, seeing where agave is naturally grown, like agave cupreata, and like all this just unreal stuff.
So cool.
So those 2 are absolutely my like, aha, what I model everything I can. And the other outlier is Jay McDonald, who's another Willamette Valley winemaker, who I'll also be with in 2 weeks. They make 2,000 cases a year. It's this teeny tiny little producer in Carlton, Oregon. He makes Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And I worked harvest with him too. He has this little like 3 by 4 foot sign in his winery, and it just says everything matters. That's it. And like that mantra is what I've been able to adapt to everything. And I think what I've been able to help relay I mean, we've got an incredible brew squad at Origami, but like that's my favorite phrase to always throw out. Like if I walk in the brewery and there's, paintings that are a little askew, whatever, like I'm touching those to fix it, because whomever walks in that brewery is like,
Yeah.
okay, if that painting's a little off, is everything else being attended to as it should be?
Yeah.
And so it's just that perspective of like everything matters. And that's Jay's wines. I mean, they're perfect.
I've had the Chardonnay.
So yeah, and he got in trouble because on his ingredients, like he hates the term natural wine, but he makes a natural wine. There's nothing in there. But he got in trouble because he actually listed ingredients on his label for one vintage, and it just said grape clusters. And so like all the major producers were like, wait a minute, like customers are going to start expecting this, and we can't have that. They don't need to know what all we're putting in our wine. So let's make sure that doesn't happen again. And Jay was like, okay, I make 2,000 cases. Like, what? Fine, whatever.
That's crazy. That's just crazy. Yeah. I want to jump back real quick to tequila, or agave.
That's my heart.
Now, and I know it is. A lot what people don't know is how long it takes.
Yes.
I mean, it takes a while. Like agave plant, 3 to 5 years. Is that what it is?
I mean, and that's blue agave. So
right.
Most mature, I think, like a brand like Tapatio is going anywhere from like 5 to 6 to even 8 years at times. The big boys are probably cutting that short, which is doing a disservice to the whole industry. But you know, you've got certain species of agave used from mezcal, like Coyote, where depending on the environment it's grown in, I mean, they're like 20 plus years to reach maturity. And it's not a giant agave. Like it might be the size of a pumpkin.
Right.
And so like you got to have a lot of those to go into a bottle. Like you might have one plant, maybe 2 plants, and that's a bottle. So you're talking a combined 50 years for a single bottle.
Yeah.
And so when you see some of those like super like premium mezcals, and you're like, dude, why are these so expensive?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's why. Like you're talking multiple decades of investment for a single bottle.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, again, a lot of people just don't get that.
Of course.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, you know, the person that goes in and buys that expensive bottle of mezcal, you're like, do you know what you're buying?
I mean,
you know.
You hope they do. If they don't, I mean, yeah, I've always appreciated, you know, those stores that really take the time to ask that question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think that's the difference in a lot of just the booze industry in general, especially from the sales side of things, is like, are you an order taker or are you a salesman?
Yeah.
And a lot of that just boils down to passion.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, if you got it, great. It will absolutely help that brand. If not, then they might try it and they have no idea what they're drinking and they might hate it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And it screws up the whole category for them.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true, because I can tell you this as a young man, which was a very long time ago.
I wasn't going to ask.
I kind of cut scotch off for a while because I had one of those people where I walked into a bar and they were like, hey, you know, taste this. You know, it was like early 20s, and my first, it was like one of my first experiences with a bar that wasn't just like a divey bar in the middle of Philadelphia, you know. And they were like, well, we drink scotch here. And I'm like, hey, I don't know, pour me something, you know? And then I was like, I can't drink this.
So, yeah, they're throwing like a Lafroig or a Lagavulin at you, and you're like, bro, you just gave me an ashtray. Like, what?
Yeah,
what is this?
My wife says Band-Aids.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a huge descriptor in that.
Yeah. And it's like, that shouldn't be the first thing that you taste. You know, you should talk. And then now I know I like Campbellton. Like,
Baby steps.
I like
absolutely.
that region. You know, that's what I like. But for years, I was like, don't put me near scotch, you know? So got to educate, you know, it's a thing.
I mean, that's a huge influence on agave and sake. Like most people's experience, like you've either had, you know, that gold tequila that we don't really talk about. It's a mixto, and like 51% is tequila and the other 49%. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
Nobody does. And sake is the same way. Like most people's experience with sake, you've got a white carafe in front of you.
Mm.
You have no idea what the brand is. It's served hot. It's high alcohol. It tastes like, again, fingernail polish remover and maybe some warmed up oatmeal.
Yeah.
And you have to shoot it just out of like necessity of survival.
Yeah.
And most people think that's what sake is. And so like for us, it's a huge reintroduction of not just what premium sake is, but just sake as a general category. Because most people they didn't know sake could be cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or aromatic, or it drinks like wine. And they're like, what is this? I'm like, yeah, drink more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Drink this.
Delicious.
Here's my phone number.
Yeah. Bug me.
Yeah, bug me. Please bug me. I do that. That's funny, doing catering and stuff like that. I'm like, seriously, just call me. Don't guess, just call me. Just call me. It's a thing. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to dig into some sake, okay? All right, we'll be right back with Heaping Spoonful.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Chef Brian McFadden.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful. We have a very special guest today. We have Brett Basset here, and I can tell you that I have to come clean, okay? Now, so coming up where I came up, between Philadelphia and just outside of Philly, where I spent, just kind of bouncing back and forth, my childhood and my 20s and stuff like that. Sake was not huge. There was only a few places that we got sake from. And, to continue our conversation, before we took the break, it's some of that part of was like irresponsible servers, like you talked about, like order takers or like actual knowledgeable people, salesmen that are gonna say, man, listen, I know what you think of sake right now, okay? But I need you to taste this, and I'm going to tell you where it came from. I'm going to tell you why it came from there. We're going to talk about washing rice. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about that, okay? And there was only a couple places back home. Actually, one, really. There's a place up in the Promenade. It's called Kome. And Kome, they had like a big selection.
Still there?
Still there.
Nice.
Not a chain, but they have like the family themselves have like 5 or 6 different. There's Uka, there's Kome, there's a couple other ones, and one is like one's owned by the brother, one's the father.
Gotcha.
This and that, and they're giant restaurants, like they're big restaurants. They're not like little, like when you go into the heart of Philadelphia, when you're like 15th and Locust, like a little shop, which is where I had some of the best sake.
Right.
But they started educating a little bit out of the city. So that's when I learned I could drink it cold, and where I learned a tiny bit about the process. But so you're with Origami Sake now, and it is, when we talked about it, I mean, it is the biggest producer?
The largest domestically owned sake brewery in the country.
Right here in Arkansas.
We're about 24,000 square feet of beautiful stainless steel and water and rice.
Oh, man. I got to make it over there.
It's so dope. Say when. We'll make that happen.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd like to bring Taylor over there.
Yeah, we need to bring the whole squad.
Oh, man.
Staff. But you guys don't close.
Yeah. Well, we are closed on Sundays, but
that can work.
we have to figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
But let's talk about this process. I mean, I do want to talk about what we're drinking right now, but we can get into that in a second. Let's talk about the process. I mean, we're in Arkansas, so we can talk rice all day.
Exactly. I mean, when it boils down to it, you look at a bottle of sake and 99% of it per volume or by volume is water and rice.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about Arkansas as a state, we produce literally half the rice consumed in the United States. Half. When we're talking about premium varietals used for sake and sushi, it's even higher.
Wow.
And when we talk about a water source, like why are you guys in Hot Springs? I mean, if you've ever had Mountain Valley water, we are tapped into the same water source. It's the Ouachita Mountain Aquifer. So we dug 680 feet below the brewery to tap into the same aquifer.
It's crazy.
It's perfect pH. Shout out to DeLuca's. That's why their crust is also delicious. But yeah, it's low in iron, it's low in manganese, which are huge for off-putting flavors in sake. So to not have those two in groundwater is
awesome.
Rare and super awesome. Talking about terroir in terms of wine earlier, there's a lot of regions in Japan, several regions that are known for their sake, but it's because of their water source.
Makes sense.
And so you're talking about a sense of place just with a rice beverage.
Right.
It's wild. So, but for us, with the rice perspective, we've got an incredible farming family that's called the Isbells. They're located just outside of England, Arkansas, actually in a little city called Humnoke, which is just outside of Stuttgart. So the rice and duck capital of the world is Stuttgart, Arkansas.
So I when you said England, I was like, wait, I know England because I drive through
Drive
England.
through it to get to Stuttgart. 100%, yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So they've been growing the best varietals of sake rice for the better part of 4 decades at this point. They were the first outside of Japan to grow Yamada Nishiki, which is the king of sake rice. Wow. If you look at a globe, the 35th parallel in terms of latitude and longitude, Japan, Arkansas, and there's one farm in Sacramento, California that's growing it, but we're all on the 35th parallel.
Wow, that's super cool. Talk about education.
It's
wild.
Yeah. And it's fun, like getting to do regional perspectives, like being in, like my territory right now is Arkansas, Tennessee, and Missouri. Mm-hmm. And so like getting to go to Kansas City or St. Louis or Nashville and like talk about regionality of, and they're like, why are y'all in Arkansas? And you tell them that and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, and we share a border, bro.
Yeah.
Like y'all are big on, craft beer and whatever else being regional. Like we're a regional sake brewery.
Yeah.
And it just blows their gourd.
But it makes total sense though.
Yes. It's surprising that nobody's done this yet.
Yeah.
Because the Isabels have been selling sake rice to 20 plus breweries for decades.
Yeah, because there's quite a few breweries that have like a rice beer.
Absolutely. Yes, now. But then they were, I don't know if they were sourcing their rice from even Arkansas at that point, which is crazy to think about. But now it's like that single family or that single farm, type stuff where it's kind of like a single vineyard and wine. Like, yeah, we get our rice from one person, from one farm kind of thing. So it makes it even more special.
And I really need you to correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right, but I need you to tell me if I'm wrong. So the thing about Arkansas is that there is a level, there is clay under the soil. So that's why, like, when we get a big rain, we get rain and stuff. So the water sits on top of the soil.
Water table just stays there.
It just stays. Yeah.
So I don't know that perspective in terms of soil science. Mm-hmm. All I know is that my entire family is from Northeast Arkansas.
Okay.
And then my other side of the family is from Southeast Arkansas. And so growing up literally on the entire eastern side of the state, all I ever saw was rice fields. Like, that was it. And that's why the mosquitoes were so terrible everywhere. It's because of the rice fields. There's always water on them.
And to continue that, we'll get back, but to continue that that's why there's so many ducks, because the ducks eat the bugs.
Yep. So. And also, we're the entire eastern side of Arkansas is the Mississippi River, so we're in the Mississippi floodplain. And so they're, in terms of migration, that's their migratory pattern. And they're like, oh, there's a lot of rice here too, so let's hang out for a little while.
Yeah, let's do this. Yeah. And when I drive out to Stuttgart, the guys at R&T are good friends of ours.
Nice.
And we go out there and hang out, and
we're in their tap room, by the way.
Are you?
Yes, we are.
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I did not know that. John Stevens is the man. He's awesome.
Great people down there for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My cousin built his bar, and I help him build his food truck. So
nice.
We have a really good relationship.
That's awesome.
My first and only experience duck hunting was with John Stevens.
How'd you do?
I did okay, but I think they helped me out.
Understood.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you shot that one for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And there's 6 other people shooting, is what you're saying?
His brother was probably standing behind me shooting at the same time. I was like, why is he standing behind me? Oh, he's fine. Just leave him.
My first duck was the exact same experience, and I'm finally getting to the point, like 30 years later, to embrace that. Yeah, I probably didn't shoot that duck. They just told me I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I have friends back home who, in Pennsylvania, we do a lot of goose hunting. I don't, but
Gotcha.
There's a lot of goose. And my very first time I went back home to visit before I moved down here, I told my buddy that I went duck hunting, and he was like, "Oh, cool! Like somebody take it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a place. It's called R&T, Rich and Tone." And he was like, "Wait."
They make everybody's calls.
He's like, "You talk?" And I was like, "Yeah, the guy who owns the place, his name is John Stevens." And he's like, "Listen to me, you son of a bitch. You tell me that the first and only time you went duck hunting, you went with John Stevens?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Man, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yep.
I'm done." He's like, "I have like 10 of his calls.
Exactly.
I follow him, all that stuff,
Yep.
I was like, "Oh, cool." I was actually in his workshop like 2 weeks ago. Just kept piling on.
Yeah, there's a new Brain prototype coming out.
Yeah, it's my face and the whole thing.
It looks like a cheesesteak.
All right, so let's talk about because there's a lot of people out there, man. Let's talk about the process. Like how do you make sake?
So in the simplest form, you've got 4 ingredients. So we make a style that's called junmai, meaning that there's no brewer's alcohol added whatsoever. So everything in our product is naturally fermented. So in terms of 4 ingredients, you've got rice and water, which we already keyed on, and then there's 2 fermentation agents, koji and yeast. And so if you think about in terms of flavor profile, like we make a very fruit forward sake as you're drinking right now. Like it's in your face.
Ridiculous.
There's no flavors in that. Like all of that flavor comes from the esters of the yeast and the umami characteristics of the koji.
Wow.
If you think about a clean water source, it doesn't taste like anything. If you think about steamed rice, it doesn't really taste like much.
Yeah, got it.
And so all of that flavor profile and aromatics come from the fermentation agents. So for us, in terms of the process, obviously we're the source of the water and the rice we've keyed on. But with the rice, it's super important for the milling process. So you polish the rice. The Isabels, we actually partnered with them to move a milling facility all the way from Minnesota to their farm. And so we are now in partnership with them on the milling facility. And the reason for that was basically for fossil fuel conservation. So we've even got 2 acres of solar panels at the brewery. We're fully solar powered.
That's awesome.
We're tapped into a naturally replenishing water source, and we're even gravity fed in the majority of our processes. So in terms of being a green brewery, we're about as green as it gets.
Wow.
The rice is literally, I think, 69 miles from our front door. So everything's in our own backyard. So there's no point of us shipping the rice all the way to Minnesota, get it milled, and then shipping it all the way back to Arkansas. I mean, it would have been insane.
Yeah.
So partner with them, brought it down. And why the milling process is important is you want to get to the starch. So the center of a grain of rice is starch, and that's a complex sugar. So you polish off the fats and proteins on the outside of that grain of rice to get access to the starch. Koji's process, so koji is the other fermentation agent next to yeast. So koji's sole purpose is to convert that starch to a fermentable sugar.
Gotcha.
So it's a sporulating mold. So basically it goes down and with enzymes, it converts it to a fermentable sugar. So then yeast can come in and you've got natural fermentation from yeast. So yeast eats the sugar and then you've got ethanol and CO2 as a byproduct of fermentation. And it's all working in unison. So it's the only beverage product like it. It's called a double parallel fermentation. It doesn't exist in the booze world outside of sake. And so as you can imagine, these only take about a month to produce. So if you don't keep everything cold, especially in Arkansas summers with 2 fermentation agents, it can get real weird real fast. So it's like a lab at the brewery. I mean, it always smells like rubbing alcohol. Like everything is sanitized top to bottom all day, every day. Like we even have to cool our water before we add it to the batches just to make sure that it doesn't heat up that fermentation any more than we need it to.
Right.
So from that point, yeah, you've got your polished rice. It's soaked. Only 20% of that rice is koji rice.
Okay.
The other 80% is just steamed rice.
Okay.
So you add those to the batch, and then you've got the fermentation process. And so all the way through, there's 3 additions that go in. So you're adding another pitch addition of yeast to keep that fermentation reinvigorated just about every 7 to 10 days. So they take about a month to make.
Now, say in this particular one that we're sipping on right now, because I know in beer, come from that world. What is the yeast? Is it specific yeast?
Yes. So there's actually a huge database of sake yeast, and they're all numbered. And so you can actually select a yeast based off of its known like esters and things. So we've selected a yeast. We're drinking 1,000 Cranes right now, which is one of our flagships. And this particular yeast imparts a very like melon forward, like honeydew, cantaloupe.
Yes.
And this like lemon peel citrus characteristics. So it's all based off the yeast selection, and there's a whole database of it. But we've now got a lab at the brewery where we're actually experimenting with cultivating our own yeast, our own koji. We're playing around with champagne yeast and maybe, sparkling stuff down the road.
So cool.
We're about to make a non-alc sake. Like that category is so huge.
Oh, it's big right now.
So yeah, we're in the works right now with working with a different yeast that will not ferment alcohol, but we'll still have all the esters from it and things like that. So we'll have a non-alc sake to sell, sushi restaurants and whomever else is interested in it.
That is awesome.
So yeah, it's all about the number on the yeast perspective.
Yeah, that's so cool. You talk about champagne yeast. That's actually my favorite yeast.
Nice.
I'm a saison guy, so I like a saison.
Yeah, you give me a farmhouse all day, and that's
Yeah, that's where I'm at for sure.
Saison DuPont is that. Hey, that might have been my aha beer actually.
Yeah. That's a name drop right there.
Yeah, Saison DuPont might have been the aha beer. But of course, my name being Brett, I was like, wait, there's a yeast out there called Brettanomyces, and it's just called. Wait a minute, what is this? Is this destiny? I'm like, okay.
So there's a gentleman, I had the pleasure of working with him for a little bit. His name is John Dale. He owns a place. I worked for him before I moved down here, Spinnerstown Hotel. And John Dale was the first one to introduce me to Saison DuPont.
Nice.
And I was his biggest competition before I started working for him because I was a beer bar like maybe 5 miles from him, and in the area where we were, like I was his biggest competition. So he used to come down and sit at my bar, and we became friends.
Nice.
And but he was the first guy out there that was doing, he was doing craft beer 30 years before anybody else was doing it.
Of course.
So he brought a beer in for me one night. I'm closing up, and I knew he would come in like 15 minutes before close.
Of course.
And he would sit there and be like, "What do you got on tap?" And blah 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 blah. And he pulled that just out of his pocket. He's like, "Drink this." It says on DuPont, and I was like, "Oh,
what is this magic? I don't know what this is, but I want more of it."
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And he's like, "Well, why don't you come work for me?"
Okay.
All right. So this one is, you said 10,000 cranes?
1,000 cranes.
1,000 cranes. So you have, what is in the line? Like, what's the lineup?
So currently these two, so I'm showing brand, the other is White Lotus, so that's our Nagori style. That's the unfiltered.
Gotcha.
And then we just added literally this week a new expression called Angelfish. So Angelfish, I'm picking up more samples, unfortunately about an hour from now, so I'll have to bring it in to let you try it later.
Damn, I knew we should schedule later.
Or tomorrow. But Angelfish, we did a bunch of experiments that were called like above the fold. And it was, again, these take a month to make. So you can actually overlap batches and do all sorts of fun stuff in terms of just our normal too. So they did some experimental things. So the Isabel sent us over a batch of Yamada Nishiki. Again, that's the king of sake rice. So the best sake rice in existence. And it was polished all the way to 40%. So when I say 40%, that's what's remaining of that grain of rice. So 60% of that grain of rice was polished off.
Gotcha.
So you're talking about almost pure starch at that point. And so all of those outside characteristics, what we talked about earlier, of like oatmeal flavors and all that stuff, those are gone. And you're left with just pure starch. So it's mostly the yeast getting to do its thing. So that you've got all these fruit esters. It's just explosive, like in your face, just beautiful aromatics.
Right.
So yeah, it's more than likely one of the cleanest, most beautiful expressions that we can make in the state of Arkansas.
That's so awesome. Now you said, which actually I don't know why I thought this, but so you said it takes a month to make. So 1,000 cranes, White Lotus, and then you have Angelfish coming out.
Yep.
They all take a month.
Yes.
Wow.
So what's wild with Lotus? So we've kind of reinvigorated a new process, and so even with our connections to Nambu Bijan, where Ben interned, Tamakawa is their Toji master, sorry, and he's come over close to 5 or 6 times since we've been open to like just see our processes, help out, hang out, live at the brewery for a few weeks, and just kind of like roam around and do stuff. And like he's truly one of the masters of sake. Wow. And our process of Lotus, to my understanding, is something that he's quite jealous of because they're a very traditional brewery and they can't do a lot of the processes that we can.
Gotcha.
And so with this, on like day 27, 26 of 30, this looks just like 1,000 cranes. And you've seen this. I mean, it's like opaque.
It's
white.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we actually do a 4th edition where we do a hot shobu ferment. So we actually hot ferment. We pitch a yeast, but there's no alcohol added. And so it imparts this like coconut, lime, citrus characteristic, and we emulsify it and blend it back into the batch. Man. So as most Nagoris are used to actually having this like chalky, almost like hard rice characteristic to them.
Yeah.
All of this is soft because it's steamed to high hell, literally.
Wow.
And so it's super soft. The texture, the mouthfeel, it's just as creamy as it gets. And it's a whole different process that apparently some of the best sake producers in the world are jealous of.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Haha.
Yeah.
So I have a young lady that works in my kitchen right now, Kate, and that is her favorite. Yeah, she loves that.
It's been interesting. So when we first hit the market, we thought that cranes, just because of appearances, might outweigh Lotus like 2 to 1. Because again, we're shooting for like a wine drinker sake, and so 1,000 cranes looks like wine.
Right.
And just the appearance of Lotus, we're like, oh, okay, we might not sell as much as, dude. They've been neck and neck. And it's so interesting. Like the industry nerds like you and I flock to that. But then it's also the people that know nothing about alcohol have flocked to that.
Right.
So like it's polarizing, but in the best of ways. Like you're like, wait, you like Lotus? And you're like, yeah, this is delicious. And I'm like, hell yeah, like, let's go.
Well, I do think that you guys are doing a really good job of educating people. Even like you just mentioned, like people that don't know anything about alcohol are going into it. But I can tell you this right now, man, that, sitting at my bar, and I sit at my bar often.
I've seen that. He's not lying.
Just people. I love it when people don't know that I'm brewed in barley, and I sit there, and when we start talking about stuff, everybody who has tasted this is like, man, this is crazy. And we had some people in a couple months ago from New York, and they were talking about how good this was. And I was like, yeah, it's made right here in Arkansas.
Correct. Yeah, now we're now in 10 states as of this week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we've only been in our own market. So we are currently in Jersey.
Are you really?
So we're now in New Jersey. We'll be in Georgia within the week. We're in Florida, Tennessee, Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, Nevada, Texas, and Colorado.
That's crazy, man. That's awesome. I'm really happy you said that, because most of the time when I talk to people about and I'm like, well, how far east do you go? Well, obviously that's for selfish reasons,
Of course.
But nobody goes up like Jersey, Pennsylvania, so that's awesome.
We're in Jersey. It was actually one of the top 10 sake markets.
Oh, yeah.
Surprising. I mean, you'd think, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what we're going to tackle outside of the regional touches of either side of Arkansas. We're trying to get into the top 10 states for sake buying first.
Yeah.
And then trickle into other markets as needed.
Makes total sense.
We haven't hit New York or California for obvious reasons yet. Texas is also in the top 3, but we're not quite ready to jump into those 2 markets yet.
Hey.
We're going to need more boots on the ground. We're already encountering that issue as we speak.
How old now?
We've only been in our own market of Arkansas since last August.
Wow.
So just over a year in terms of actually selling product.
Man, so good. I have to tell you, this is funny because I just thought about this. I just took a sip of the White Lotus, and I haven't tasted the White Lotus since it came out, really. I was talking on the phone with Rusty about 2 weeks ago, and we're talking about the podcast.
I love that, man.
Man, he's like my adopted grandfather.
Yep, I love that, man.
Father. He's so awesome. But the funny thing is he would ask me a question, and then I would answer back, and then there was silence, and I was like, "Hey, Rusty, you still there?" And he's like, "Brian, I'm sitting on my front porch, I'm smoking a cigar, and I'm drinking a glass of whiskey. So if there's a pause in the conversation, I'm either taking a sip or I'm taking a puff of the cigar." So for a second there,
that's great.
Just so you know, if there's any dead air, we're just sipping sake. That's
Correct.
it.
Yes.
That's it.
We're going to bring the funnel out here shortly and make it very interesting.
We'll get all the office people involved. Yes. They're all really quiet out there.
I got plenty of cups, man. We can make this happen.
Now, let me ask you this, and this is, again, I've used this word 3 times already because I am a selfish person, and this is me being selfish.
I love that.
So it takes a month to brew, okay? But is there any, aging in the future? Could you barrel age it?
There's actually a style of sake. Off the top of my brain, I should know that term, but I can't remember it right now. But yeah, you barrel aged sake. So we actually at Lost 40s Festival of Darkness last year, the theme is barrel aged beers, and we actually barrel aged the White Lotus, and it was phenomenal.
What barrel?
It was a white oak barrel. I don't remember where it came from or what was in it prior. But yeah, it was everything you would expect. Big baking spice notes, little vanilla, and even it was a even better mouthfeel, which I wasn't sure that was possible. But I think it kind of dampened down the acidity on it, and so it just made it even softer. Wow. But yeah, it was absolutely delicious. And of course, that was an Eric Michael Morris project who used to work for Lost 40. So he's been on the majority of the 90-night batches since that originated. So he's got a lot of experience in terms of throwing stuff into a barrel and just seeing where the hell it goes. So cool. But it was delicious. So hopefully that will be another one of those experimental things that we can do further down the road in terms of small batch type stuff.
That's really cool.
And throw at markets. I'm like, hey, you're an account that's bought 10 cases in, hey, do you want to try some of this stuff?
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh yeah, we'll give you some access to it.
Well, the other thing is too, back home now, I see it now, but I can definitely say this, that some of my friends back home listening are gonna be upset with me. I actually saw it first here in Arkansas. We're sitting here and we're drinking this straight, But dude, you put this stuff in cocktails.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, well, there was the sake competition that I had two bartenders.
Yes, you did. There were,
and they both did well.
Absolutely. They were awesome. So that was my background. And it's one of those ideologies of, we want to be purists. Like, is this delicious on its own? Does it deserve to be on its own? Of course it does. Mm-hmm. But from like a marketing and sales standpoint, at our price point, you can throw these into a cocktail, and especially with the low alcohol movement trending everywhere and low ABV cocktails, these are only about 14, 15% alcohol. Mm-hmm. And so throwing that into a cocktail, and they have so much weight and acidity that they can be substituted for a spirit. Like our best trending cocktail with 1,000 Cranes is just a margarita.
Oh, that's awesome.
3 ounces of 1,000 Cranes, a half ounce of fresh lime juice, and a half ounce of simple syrup.
How come I have not had this?
I'll make it for you. I'm going to need to borrow a half ounce of simple syrup and lime juice for you when we sit at the bar, but I don't think you would bark at that. And then you just do an orange zest expression for the curacao substitute, and all of a sudden you've got this acid bomb of a margarita, and it's absolutely crushable. With the Lotus, because of that lactic acid component, it's got a natural foaming agent in it. So we've been throwing it in like espresso or carajillo riffs, like espresso martini carajillo riffs, and it's incredible.
Man.
Do a little like cold brew concentrate, a little like vanilla simple syrup, and that. Like 2 ounces of this, 2 ounces of cold brew, and a half ounce of vanilla simple, shaken. You get this big old thick head on it, and it's just like an espresso martini. It's wild.
Again, being selfish, I'm gonna have Rob edit this part out because I don't want everybody to hear that. I just want to do it at Brood.
So what? You're too late on that batch because they're already on the website, and I've already got little like business card size things with those recipes on it that I just throw in everybody's face that I can.
I don't think you knew this. Looking at me, do you know that McFadden is a Latino name? Obviously joking, but I was going to say margarita fan.
Brain's beard looks a lot like mine, but about 10 years progressed in terms of the grayscale.
Hey, yeah, for sure. My kids remind me of that every day. Dad, beard's getting a little gray. Yeah,
I got some patches.
But my cousin and I we are like margarita purists. Like
yes.
I'll drink some margaritas.
From Lee Edwards' tutelage, and then being beverage director at Yellow Rocket. I mean, you've got Heights Taco and Local Lime under your belt that you have to make sure those margaritas are dialed in all day, every day. So yeah.
And they are.
I'm absolutely
drank many of those margaritas.
Yeah, those margaritas sustain those entire bar programs. Like it doesn't matter what you do with everything else. They're like, oh yeah, the numbers still look great this week. Yep. Thanks, margaritas.
That's just how it's kind of like where I'm at with cheesesteaks. Exactly. We're kind of slow. We sold a lot of cheesesteaks.
That's great. Yeah. But yeah, so it's, Little Rock, especially with their Arkansas in general, but Little Rock, especially with that cheese dip heritage, like the margaritas are dialed in too. There's a lot of people in town that can make a badass margarita.
Oh, dude. For a while there, my wife and I had a shared day off, and we were like, where are we drinking margaritas at?
Exactly.
And it was either Local Lime, Heights Taco, which you think is the same margarita, but it's not.
They're a little different.
They are a little different. Mm-hmm. It's the terroir.
I'm not going to tell you how.
You don't have to tell. The Fold.
Yeah, it's that West Little Rock versus the Heights West Little Rock water versus the Heights water. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
For sure, terroir.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we just had friends in from out of town, and we had margaritas at the Fold the other day.
Dude, shout out Bart Barlogi. Love you, dude.
I love that guy. Yeah, I'm gonna have him on. Kelly had him on, so I'm not trying to do any repeats right now.
Understood.
And I've listened to every episode of Heaping Spoonful like before I started doing it.
Yes.
And I was like, I saw his name on there. I was like, damn you.
I missed it.
But I've not had a margarita with this. So now, this might happen today.
Yeah, I'll text you the recipe.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if I can meet you over there, we can make that happen too.
Man, oh man. Am I getting myself into some trouble watching the Phillies tonight?
Game on. What's today? It's Tuesday. Yeah, we're good. Then we can go do some karaoke or something somewhere, Town Pump or...
My wife's going to be like,
4-quarter.
Babe, you need to pick the kids up.
Also dangerous in terms of, and something we haven't keyed on yet. So talking about the cocktails, which is a great transition to this too. So in terms of like how we're adaptable to menus, like it's a brewed beverage. So initially, like we're taxed as a brewery. So we're talking about like craft brewed beverage. So from the craft beer perspective, like we're on the wall at Flying Saucer. Like we're on the wall at 4-quarter.
Taps.
And so like from that perspective, it's a beer.
Yeah.
Because it's brewed. Does it drink like a beer? Absolutely not. But technically, we are a brewed beverage.
That's awesome.
But we drink like a wine. You know, we've got a literal wine glass on the back of the label.
Right.
And then craft cocktails. So, like, I don't know of anything else that fits all three of those categories in terms of the booze world.
Yeah, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
I know.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate in that. And I've been playing those three categories as best as I can, depending on the account that you walk into.
Yeah.
That's what's been fun of going to these new markets. Like, I mean, just cold calling. Like, I was in Kansas City last week for 4 days, just literally roaming around with a bag on my shoulder. Like, where can I pop into now?
Yeah.
Like, nerding out with whatever's on the back bar. I'm like, hey, man, do you want to try some sake made in Arkansas? And they're like, what did you just say? Like, hell yeah, I do. I mean, usually that was their response because they were so intrigued by they'd never heard that phrase before.
I love that town. We're not going to talk about the football team, but I do love that town.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm a diehard Razorback fan all day, so I have no pro teams whatsoever.
Oh, so you're an Eagles fan.
I'm a third-generation Razorback.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, in certain perspective, it's been great. You know, I've seen a national championship. I was 9.
So coming from a restaurant perspective, we're not a sports bar. So, you know, sports, any sport, really, if it's a big game, it's like...
Slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not a place like, unfortunately, maybe we'll get there one day,
Yep.
but we're not a place where like...
Yeah, I think
you're on.
Yellow Rocket learned that the hard way when we opened Big Orange. There were no TVs. And it was that same perspective. So now, like, upstairs, there are TVs in that, like, loft area at
Yes,
Big Orange
there are.
Midtown. And then now, of course, Heights Taco absolutely has giant TVs behind the bar.
Yeah, you have to. I feel
So,
like you
yeah,
have to.
correct. Yeah, if you want any business when the Hogs are playing, you got to have TVs up.
And you have to have that one person that makes sure how to work the remote.
There's also that. Yes, that was never me.
Oh, God.
Nope.
Yeah, I've worked those bars.
There's there's these cool hybrid bars popping up too, like Botanical in Bentonville. Have you been there?
I have not.
So Alex Taylor has opened up a bar that's a beer and wine bar. It's kind of like English pub themed, but it's decorated in one of the prettiest formats that I've seen in terms of a cocktail bar. Wow. But it's a pub, but it's also a sports bar. But there's like living walls of plants as decor.
Wow.
And their entire cocktail menu are sake cocktails.
Really?
Because it's a beer and wine license.
So
You can throw cocktails on the menu with no spirits, with the acidity of sake, and it translates.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Talk about finding your niche.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had 2 bartenders, again, the cocktail competition you talked about earlier. They had 2 bartenders that were finalists in that competition.
Wow.
Alex being one of them. But yeah, special stuff. You should check them out next time you're in Bentonville.
Oh, 100%. So let me ask you this. I have a feeling, obviously, you're going to be with Origami Sake for a while. But what's next, man? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting thinking about. I've been, not to divulge, but I'm going to private info. But yeah, Matt, our owner, his dad and my dad were in the mortgage banking business together 30 years ago. So I've known Matt since I was single digits years old. And yeah, these conversations, I think the natural progression with my love for on-premise stuff will more than likely be like a national on-premise role.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, man, listen, I mean, having you on today was special for me.
It's my pleasure, man.
I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out, man. And like, not just a conversation, but like you educated me. Educated me on a lot of things.
That's what we're all about.
And I appreciate it. And also I have to say, like, your support, for Brood, since we opened has been awesome. And not even from a sales side, from just being in and supporting. I really appreciate it.
And that's what it's all about. You guys push the boundary in the best directions. In terms of putting Little Rock on the map for what it's supposed to be on the map for. I mean, I think Little Rock outkicks, and North Little Rock, I say Little Rock, I mean like Central Arkansas area. Like, you guys are a huge driving factor of us outkicking our coverage in terms of population size and how many cool spots we have in town. And you guys always being in that top tier of stuff. Like, it's all of us that should be thanking you for putting that into perspective and bringing that to a hometown of people that appreciate it. And I get to share what you guys do with people on a national scale and perspective. And it's people like Lee Edwards that are dipping back in and like, hey, what's Brood doing? And like that kind of stuff where, I mean, he's in 13 states.
Wow.
So like that kind of stuff, like you guys, I mean, y'all are pushing boundaries in the best of ways. So yeah, you're absolutely keeping Little Rock where it needs to be in terms of pushing, the edge in the best of ways for the culinary perspective and the hospitality industry. So kudos to you, truly.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
That means the world to me, especially coming from you. And I'm going to just leave you with this. Let's figure out this sake dinner.
Okay, if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to drop the bomb on you too. I was like, all right, bro, when is this happening?
I say, honestly, let's shoot for spring.
Okay.
Yeah, let's shoot for spring.
Come on.
Yeah. I'll talk to Jess. We'll get it on the calendar, and let's ball out.
Yep.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
We're down. I mean, we've got plenty of time at that point to maybe even do some special who knows what.
Okay, cool. All right. You heard it here first.
You did.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Brett for coming on. I'd like to thank Rusty Mathis, general manager over here at Benny Keith. And I'd certainly like to thank Rob Nelson. He is the head of technology over here. I come in and bother Rob the first and third Tuesday. And in return, he makes us sound good on here. So thank you, Rob. I appreciate all that you do. You can hear Heaping Spoonful the first and third Tuesday of every month. We got some good ones coming up. I appreciate you for listening, and talk to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.